Hi, it's me. So after many requests, I've finally decided to do a tutorial. Yay! I know that I did the other video the other day and that was super fast and you couldn't really see what I was using, but it was primarily just to give you an idea of what an application involves and more for me to practice really, because I don't know what I'm doing. So anyway, we're going to do brows today. We did a poll yesterday, and that's the one that most people have decided they want to see. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and do that today. Now there are two different types of brows that are on trend right now, and usually when you come to see me to have your makeup done, you'll get the Instagram brow, and that's basically just a bog standard brow that everybody has, especially when you have a full face of makeup done, because the Instagram brow is quite thick, obviously as thick as you want it to be, but it stands out a lot better, and as we know, brows frame your face. The other type of brow is the more natural brush stroke brow, and I've had quite a few requests for that. It seems to be something that makeup artists are doing more and more nowadays. And it's basically using more or less the same products as what you use when you do an Instagram brow, but it's sort of like done in a brush stroke application, so it looks more like your natural hair, as opposed to sort of like the more blocky colour that you get with the Instagram brow. So I'm going to show you both of those today, and I'm going to show you a couple of the different brushes that I use as well, because the most important thing to remember is a complete game changer is when you use the right tools. That makes all the difference in makeup. And a lot of people say to me, I can't do my own brows, I can't do it, you do it so good. And a lot of the time it's because they're using the wrong tools or the wrong products. So that's what I'm going to show you today, is what I use, and what if you use, hopefully you'll be able to do it. So we're going to start with the natural brow, with the brush strokes, the brush stroke brow. And for that, so for both brows, I use an angled brush. It's got to be quite a thin angled brush, otherwise you kind of get this really blocky colour. So if you use a brush like this, I mean, this is just a Morphe M165, and this is quite a thick angled brush. I don't know if you can see that, but it's super thick. So if you sort of do your brows with that, you're not only going to be picking up a lot of product, but it's going to come on quite thick onto your brow, and you're going to have less control over how much you've got on there. So it's always better to use a smaller, thinner, narrower brush. This is the best one that I've got at the moment. This is the Anastasia Beverly Hills 7B, and as you can see, that's super fine and super thin, and it's got a handy spoolie on the other end as well. They retail about £18, so that's quite expensive in terms of brushes, but Peaches Makeup, they do another one. I've used it that much I can't actually see what it is. PCC 9, I think it is. That's also very thin, as you can see, and that's got a spoolie on the other end of it as well. So that's great, and that's £2.50. I think it was when I bought it, which is nothing in comparison to the cost of some of the other brushes. So if you want to have a go at doing this like I do it, then I'd recommend getting this brush. If you're not very experienced and, you know, maybe you're going to have a go, it doesn't work and you're going to go back to your pencil or whatever, just get the £2.50 one. If you already do your brows and, you know, you just want to sort of balance it up a little bit, then invest the £18 Anastasia Beverly Hills brush, because it's amazing. So they're the brushes that we apply with. Stay away from the thick one. Next product. So right, for the brush stroke brows, I use a couple of different products. The first one I use on everybody, and I use this for both different brows. This is the Revolution Pro, so it's Makeup Revolution Pro Brow Pomade, and my shade is Ebony, and they do so many different shades, so you can find one to to match your brows, and I tend to get a colour that is more closer to my root, but because I don't want you to see my roots because most of them are grey, I dye it black, almost black, so I go for the ebony because it's darker. But if you've had like a balayage and you're blonde, but you've got a darker root, I would more than likely go for the darker root. Try and stick to your natural colour as much as humanly possible, unless you've got bleach blonde hair and you like black eyebrows, because apparently some people do that. So yeah, the brow pomade. And the other thing that I use is, this is the Anastasia Beverly Hills. This is a brow definer. So this has got two little ends to it. We've got a spoolie on one end, which they always come in handy. And the other end is a pencil. And it's kind of got like a triangular shape to it. I don't know whether you can see it or not. It's like a triangle. And the top of the triangle is thin. And the bottom of the triangle is thick, obviously. So, and I use that, I tend to fill in, when I do a natural brow, what's the shade of this one? This is ebony as well. When I do a natural brow, I tend to fill in little bits on the natural brow with the pencil as opposed to the pomade, because this is a lot thicker than this. This is going to be a lot more opaque than this is. If you're looking to sort of just have a natural brow and you don't want it heavy at all, I would definitely recommend having a pencil as opposed to a pomade. Anyway, right, so let's get started on this natural brow. So usually when I do brows, I tend to carve out the brow after, which I will be doing on the Instagram side, but for a natural brow I like to carve it out first. And I would do that if I had some concealer, which apparently I've forgotten. So hang on. For argument's sake, I'm just going to use, because I literally just opened my box and picked one out. So this is Revolution's Conceal and Define in C1, because it's the lightest and I tend to be quite pale. However, I don't look particularly pale because I've done my makeup, and usually I wouldn't. Normally I do brows first, as you know, if you've been to me before, but you don't have to. That's just something I do in case there's fallout from the eyes, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so we're going to use this, and I just like to take a bit on the back of my hand, and you really only need a little bit. Now, brushes to apply with. If you're looking at doing quite a heavy eye look and you want to prime your eye and you're going to be priming it with concealer or something like that, then the MAC, and again, well, I don't know what this is, 252S this is. That is a flat round brush. So it's got a very, if you can see, it's very thin on the end, but it's quite flat and round. And I will use that to carve a brow out, because you get over the space of the eyelid a lot quicker when you're applying the concealer down there for a primer. But we're not doing that today. So, and likewise, if you're just sort of applying a natural eye makeup after you've done your brows, or if you're doing your brows last and you're not doing any eye makeup, then it's perfectly fine to use a smaller brush. And this one is the Morphe, oh god, I've not got my glasses on. Do you know what, I've no idea, E10, let's just go with that. Anyway, a small, stiff, flat brush like this. As you can see, it's quite thin, but it's stiff because the bristles aren't very long, so you're going to get a lot of control when you're applying the concealer onto your eye. So we're going to use that. Right, I'm just going to take a little bit off the back of my hand, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to underline the natural shape of my eyebrow. So as you can see, my brows are quite sparse, but you can still see there's more or less a natural line, and that's what we're going to be underlining. And it really doesn't have to be anything spectacular. But what you're doing is giving yourself a line to follow with your brow product. So there we go. I don't know whether you can see that there. So I've just followed the natural shape of my brow. Just a thin line of concealer. You don't need to blend it out or anything yet. So the next thing I'm going to do, we're going to create the brow strokes. And for this I use the pomade. and the Anastasia Beverly Hills 7B brush, because like I said before, it's got the thin flat end, the angled end. And I'm just going to take my brush in there and get a bit of product on it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the lid of the pot, and this is good because this is how you're going to really push that product into the brush and make sure that it's nice and crisp and flat and sharp so that you can create those brush strokes. And I'm just going to put it on the back of the lid, the top of the lid should I say. I'm just going to really push it into the brush and just flatten it out. And you can see that the brush is still sharp even though it's got product on it. Now I'm going to go ahead and create the brush strokes. So I always start at the front when I'm doing brush strokes, just because it's a lot easier to see. And when you are applying the strokes, you want them to follow in the natural pattern of your hair growth. So you can see that the brow hairs at the front are very upwards, and then as we go out to the brow, oh yeah, you need to brush your hairs up as well, so you can see, if you want to say that. So they go up here and then they start to go more out that way as opposed to straight up. So your brush strokes want to be going up and then out until you get to the tail end of the brow where they'll start to go more downwards. And just take your time with it. There's no point in rushing it because you'll end up without the actual hairs. They'll look just a mess and it'll be smudged. So make sure you take your time. Right, so you want to start near the concealer line as well. You want that brush stroke to go right up through the brow. And if you get a little bit of a clump of product like I have there, don't worry about it, because when you're finished putting your brush strokes in, you're going to brush through it with the spoolie anyway, and that'll disperse that product. Keep topping up on the back of that lid as well, because if there's no product there, you're going to put a nice brush stroke in and you won't be able to see it because you won't have enough product on your brush. So back in, pat it out, flat it out. Keep brushing your hairs up as well. So mine have a tendency to go down on their own. My eyebrows have got a mind of their own anyway. So keep brushing them up so that you can see. And the trick is to really get those brush strokes where you've got the gaps in your eyebrows, because they're supposed to look natural and you don't want them to look thick like the Instagram brow, because then that natural brow just becomes an Instagram brow. So just try and aim for where your brows are the most sparse. So when we get to sort of like the midsection here, as you can see, I've got a few gaps there, but we don't want to go right up to the top of the brow because we're going to tackle that separately. So you're just going to sort of bring it up to midway in the brow. You can see there, just added a few brush strokes. And then towards the tail end, like I say, we're going to bring them more angled down because the hairs grow down on the tail. Okay, you can see these ones are sort of angled down as opposed to out. These ones are sort of angled across as opposed to up. I know that you can see there's a few dots there where the product's built up, but don't worry about that. For the top of the brow, you're going to brush the brow hairs down, because then you'll be able to see. So don't be too hard because you don't want to disturb the brush strokes that you've just done, but brush them down, starting from round about here, because there's none that stick down in the front there, unless you've got strange eyebrows, which, you know, I'm not judging. And then what you're going to do is you're going to use the brush to brush the hair stroke down, so following the pattern of the hair, just to fill in any gaps. I always kind of like squint as well when I do it, so I can see the top of it. And keep going downward as you get towards the tail end. So you can just about see anyway where I've put the brush strokes in. Remember, you don't want it to be heavy anyway. So now with the spoolie end of your brush, you're going to gently brush through. And I suggest brushing sort of up. Don't press too hard though, because you're going to disturb the product underneath there. But it's just really to get away any of those little clumps of product that might have built up. And then I kind of like brush it over as well, because that seems to be the way that my eyebrow wants to sit, my hairs want to sit. Right, so they're the brush strokes, and you can go back in as many times as you want to make sure that you've got them neat. Everybody does their brows differently at the end of the day, and I do tend to take a lot of time on eyebrows because it's something I pride myself on. So I'm just going to go back through. Just want to fill in any little spaces that I might have left. Okay, I'm happy with the brush strokes in that. I think I've got one that's quite dark there. Okay, so now we've done that bit, I'm going to go in with my brow definer pencil, the ABH brow definer pencil. I'm just going to wiggle some of that up there. So any little gaps that you've got where your hair strokes kind of don't fill it in, so say you have got quite big patches and you can't physically fill it in with the hair strokes, then you can go back in with the pencil just slightly, not all over, just on the patches that you think need a little bit of extra coverage. And that's what I'm going to do, because I've got one that's kind of like there, and then just at the top it's quite sparse. So I'm going to go ahead and just fill out those little bits very gently with the pencil. Frowning again. And when I say gently, I mean gently. And then now that bit's done, just go back through with the spoolie to disperse the product again. Everything's rolling off my table. Okay, so if you can see, you can just see there that you can see there's more like of a brush stroke, sort of more natural looking formation to the eyebrow than there is when you sort of block fill it. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to take some clear brow gel. This one is the Barry M clear brow gel. Mine is no longer clear because I use it all the time. And it picks up product, and then the product goes in the pot, and then you end up with like this grungy grey colour. But still, I need to get some new one really, but it'll do for now. So you don't want too much product on there, so just wipe it off on the edge. And then you're just going to put a little bit through, pulling the hairs up, so sort of in an upward direction. Remember not to be too heavy with it either, because you don't want to disturb that product. There we go. And then just that concealer that we placed underneath earlier, we're going to touch up slightly just to make sure that everything's neat and straight under there. Just back over that natural line again, and then blend out. Because that's been on there quite a while as well, and obviously I've already got a full face on, so I've already done my eyes, and they're quite powdery. The concealer sort of dries out, so you can use your finger to blend that out a little bit if, like me, you're doing your brows last. The warmth from your finger will melt it again, and you'll be able to blend it out better than with a brush, because you'll leave brush marks. And there we have it. So that's my take on a natural eyebrow. So as you can see, it's not too heavy. It's not blended out properly there. That'll do. So as you can see, it still looks natural enough to pass as a natural brow. I've added in my own brush strokes there to mimic the look of hers, and then just filled in any little gaps with the pencil. And the point is for it not to look sharp and crisp. It is supposed to look natural, so you still get those like fuzzy edges, the rougher edges, and that's the whole point of having a natural brow, is that it still looks nice and clean, but it's going to look fuzzy because it's natural. Nobody has super sharp perfect brows unless you're doing an Instagram brow, and that is completely different, and that calls for it to be incredibly sharp. So with the Instagram brow, the first thing that I do is brush through the brow and make sure that all the hairs are uniform. I hope you can see this, because I don't know whether I already mentioned, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm going to use a pomade for this because it gives that coverage that you want when you're trying to fill out your brow. Again, I'm going to take it on the 7B brush purely because that is what I'm using, and I don't want to dirty any other. To make sure you get that sharp line, you are better using a thinner brush. So I'm going to get some product out of the pot. And same thing again onto the back of the lid, and it's just to make sure that you've not got too much on your brush basically, and that will be your little friend that you can dip back into without having to incessantly go into the pot. So for the Instagram brow, it's all about creating those sharp blocky lines, and I should mention before we actually go ahead and do it, I mean, I've got quite a shape in my eyebrow, enough so that I can see where I'm going with the product. But if you don't, because I do have a lot of people come to me that have next to nothing in terms of eyebrow hair, and it can be quite scary when you come to drawing on your own eyebrows, because technically they could be any old shape. So the way to combat that is, and it's really simple, is to use a brush or anything that's long and straight. Now, to measure the eyebrow, so you know where it's going, the most natural way, to do the front of the eyebrow, you're going to hold your brush next to your nose and point it straight up. And that will give you where the eyebrow should start. And you can just sort of like make a little note of that with your product. And then to find out where the end of the eyebrow is going to go, you're going to put it next to your nose and right up against the corner of your eye. So right up against here, the corner of the eye, and that's going to show you where the tail of the brow should go. Again, you can make a note of that with your product. And then to find the arch of your brow, you're going to put it against your nose again, but this time you're going to look straight forward, and where you can see my pupil, I'm going to align the brush over my pupil and follow it up to the top of the brow, just there, and that is where my arch should be. So if you're struggling with shape and definition because you've not really got a lot of shape to work with, use a brush trick and that'll point you in the right direction. But for me, I've got enough of a shape to work with. So get that product on the brush, and I'm going to begin with the bottom of the brow, and I'm going to start more or less near the front. And I'm just going to go under, again, following the natural shape of the brow, or your markings that you put down when you marked it out with your I don't know, ruler. I don't know. I'm just going to follow the natural shape in a straight line, potentially a straight line. So start more or less near the front, very gently. Just going to follow the natural shape. I'm going to bring it all the way across to where the arch is and stop. Don't video with the front camera, the selfie camera, it's rubbish. It'll look even worse when I upload it to Facebook and it goes all fuzzy. Anyway, I've gone from almost the front of the brow, followed my natural shape all across to where the arch begins. Now for the tail end, I follow the natural shape again, but I'm sort of going to bring it, rather than it being a sharp line, I'm going to take that line and I'm going to go around into a curve and then bring it down. As you can see, we've gone around rather than a harsh, straight across and straight down. And that's the bottom line. Next, we're going to work on the top. So we're going to do the top line. And for this, you're going to brush your brows down, like we did when we did the natural brows. So brush them down. And now where your sort of front brow hairs are, you're going to leave those alone, and you're going to start from where the brow hairs start to go across that way. So mine start around here. And you're just going to, so if I show you, I'm going to mark it out there. And I'm going to use this line and I'm going to bring it in a straight line all the way to the arch again, just like we did on the bottom. Make sure that you keep the distance between the top and the bottom lines the same as well. Like that. So now I'm kind of at the arch and I want to start bringing it down. So make sure you're at the end of the arch as well, because otherwise it's going to be too thin when you get down to the tail end. And now I'm going to bring it downwards to join the line that I made on the underneath for the end of the tail. So starting here, again, I frown and I don't know why. I think it's because I can't really see that portion of my eyebrow. And bring it all the way down until it meets in a natural point, like that. Can you see that? Now, the next step is I go through with the spoolie again, just to brush those hairs back up, and it also softens those harsh lines that you've made on the top and bottom. So brush through with the spoolie in the direction that the hair naturally goes, just, kind of across like that. And get some more product on my brush, and I'm going to start filling in that box. Now I'm going to start at the tail end because that's where it wants to be heaviest. You're going to have it sort of thicker and darker here at the tail. Some people call it ombre brow, and I don't really like to do an ombre brow where it looks super faded at the front, but you want it to look more natural at the front so you can see your brow hairs, because people tend to have more brow hairs here than they do here. So just, dark here, and then we're sort of going to get lighter and lighter as we go in. But all this portion, the tail and sort of up to around here, is going to be fully filled and dark. And like I say, I start at the tail end with that. I'm just going inside those lines. Bit more product. It takes a lot more product to do this type of brow than the natural brow, as you can imagine. Right, so when we get to the front, so as you can see, I've kind of gone up to here, and I've got all this section here where it is not filled, and this is all sort of solidly filled. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do sort of very lightly, I'm going to brush in an upward motion like this, just to kind of mimic hair strokes for this portion and a few at the front. And then where you've got that little line underneath here, you're going to start at that line and just brush it up, gently brush it up. And then that then blends that little line in, you see. You just pop a few more brush strokes in there. There you go. And then lastly, we're going to go back through it with the spoolie. That's going to be your best friend. It's going to blend out all that product. You can start at the start, brush upwards for those hairs. And then as we move across, it comes into a sort of horizontal motion. And likewise, when we come to the tail end, you sort of brush it down, staying in the line of the brow. And that just softens all that product out. And if you've gone a little bit too hard with the spoolie like I just did, you can always get a little bit more product and fill that gap in. Okay, as you can see, that's all filled. If you can see, the camera picks up all sorts of little gaps and things that you can't see in a mirror, which is kind of frustrating. So there you go. Don't worry if it's a bit messy after you've finished, because that's what concealer is for. Right, so take the concealer again. Again, I'm going to use the Revolution Conceal and Define, because it's the only one I have here, onto the back of the hand. So I've got about that much. I'm going to take that little flat, stiff brush again. Just dab it into the concealer. Make sure you've not got too much on your brush. And then we're going to do, like we did when we first highlighted the natural brow, we're just going to follow that line that we've just done underneath. And you can straighten it up. So if you've got any little, I've got it all in my eyelashes, look at that. That saves me right for wearing really long ones before I've done my eyebrows. So if you've got any little discrepancies, like any little mishaps where it's not so straight, you can correct that with the concealer. So when you've got that line there, just again, bring it down with the brush. Get my words out. And blend it. I'm going to just use my finger. Like I say, seeing as I've already got makeup on. Just to blend that out. Right. You have to excuse me, I think I've got a bit of a cold. I woke up this morning with a really sore throat, which isn't helpful. Not when you've got things to do. But now my nose is running and I'm thinking I've got lurgy. So now we're going to do the top, the top of the brow. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to basically do the same as what I've done underneath. So I'm going to sort of go around the shape that I've already got, just very lightly with whatever I've got left on my brush. I'm not going to dip it back in because I don't want too much. It's just a case of cleaning up any of the rough edges. And I'm not going to go near the front because you've got your brush strokes and your own hairs there. It's just basically around where we've got the blockier colour. Okay, so you can see I've just carved it out around the top and underneath. If you've got any concealer stuck in your brow, you can always use your spoolie to go back through and brush that out. I'm going to have to do that in my eyelash. Oh dear, I've pulled it off. And there you go. So now you can really see the difference. I'm going to put a bit of brow gel in as well. Just to add some definition to those front brows especially, and just to keep these locked in place, because the last thing I want is them flying all over. Like I said, they've got a mind of their own, my eyebrows have, and I look like an old man sometimes when they stick up and out in different directions. Yeah, so you can really see the difference now. you've got the very natural side, and then you've got the Instagram side, the blocky, sharp, angular colour. This light really doesn't do it any justice. If you can see what I mean though about choosing which brow to have, when you've got a full face of makeup on like this, if you go in, if it's just for a daily and you're out in the daytime, then the natural eyebrow does look better. It doesn't look as heavy, you don't look as done up. But if you're going out at night, I always recommend, this is why I say to my clients, I always recommend having the Instagram brow, because it frames your face so you can see it a lot better. It brings the makeup to life, everything sort of ties in. So there's not a lot else I can show you to do with brows. These seem to be the main two trends at the moment. And like I say, natural brows look lovely in the daytime, but if you're going out at night, I do love a good Instagram brow. And I'm sure you will too. And they can be done. They are easy to do. If you have the right tools and the right products, then you shouldn't have too much of a problem. Oh, there is one tip I do want to give you, and it's a bit of a pet hate of mine when I see people that have done the brows, especially the Instagram brow, and they've carved it out with concealer. I love carving a brow out because it makes it really sharp and clean, and it's lovely, and it gets away any of the little discrepancies you've made when you've sort of put your brush strokes in or whatever you've done. But for goodness sake, use the right shade of concealer. A lot of people have got into the habit of using a shade that's either one shade or two shades lighter than the skin to do under eye concealing, and they tend to use that one concealer for everything they do on the face. Whilst it does look okay under your eyes because it really brightens that area up, it does not look okay when it's on the top of your brow, because you get this halo brow effect, as I call it. So if you're using a super light concealer to go underneath your eye and over the top of it, your brows just go like that and really stick out. And you get a halo eyebrow, and it's not attractive. Use a darker concealer. If you want to use a lighter concealer to brighten up underneath the brow, then that's absolutely fine. Use a concealer that's one or two shades lighter, that's no problem. Don't use it on top of the brow. On top of the brow, you want to use a concealer that is your skin tone. The same as if you were covering up a blemish that you had on your face. You wouldn't use a concealer that was really light and not the right match for your skin tone, because it'd stick out. You use one that is closer to your skin tone, and I suggest you do that on the top of your brow so it doesn't stand out and it doesn't look silly. But that's really the only tip I can give you. Right tools, right products, no halo eyebrows, and you'll be absolutely fine. If you've got any questions, then do let me know. And I do offer the one-to-one sessions, and if you want to see it in the flesh and you want me to show you in the flesh, then that's doable. And I do them weekdays, mornings, afternoons, evenings, just unfortunately not weekends, and they are £50 for a 2-hour lesson. And you have the option to use my products, my tools, or you can bring your own and learn to do it with your own stuff. But they really do pay off. One-to-one sessions are invaluable pieces of training when you're up close to somebody and you can see how they do it. It's a lot more valuable than just a Facebook video. But I do hope that you've enjoyed watching this, and I haven't made myself sound like a complete and utter twat, because that would be really embarrassing, and my husband is gonna absolutely laugh his socks off at me later when he watches this. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I think the next one I'm going to do is a base tutorial to show you how I lay a flawless base and get the nice sort of like glassy skin effect that you can see on my photos and hopefully on my videos. Ding! Like the Tin Man. So yeah, keep a lookout for that, and keep a lookout for the next raffle as well, because that's coming shortly. A lot of people enjoyed doing the last one, so I should be doing another one closer to the time of Valentine's Day, I think. So hopefully you ladies have got some plans, and yeah, so keep your eyes open for that, and I'll see you soon. Bye.